What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online, you're now watching the UK's only alternative late-night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Stephen Myers, who is the author of 2 books. His first book is titled Lost Technologies of the Great Pyramid. His second book, The Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine. Now, Steve is an author, lecturer, and independent researcher who has studied the Great Pyramid for over 20 years to understand how this ancient wonder of the world was built and why. His research included traveling to Egypt to conduct extensive on-site research. Now, Stephen has written numerous magazine articles and given many lectures on the subject of the Great Pyramid. He has also founded a non-profit foundation dedicated into understanding how and why the Great Pyramid was built. Now, the mission of this foundation is to redevelop these ancient but advanced technologies to help our modern but troubled world. Stephen lives in Southwest Oregon with his wife and 2 dogs. Stephen Myers, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me on the show.
Well, Stephen, it's a pleasure to have you on, and there's so many theories on the pyramids, and it's always so interesting to get a different perspective. It's one of those subjects that does not go away. But before we sort of delve into your work too much, did you always have an interest in architecture? I mean, what was your sort of upbringing, and what sort of degree course did you do as well that eventually led you to these books?
Well, I have just, for some reason, a very technical orientation towards life and study and interest. I collect antique gasoline engines for a hobby. I'm an amateur radio operator, but most of my technical education is in electronics. First class FCC radio telephone license. I'm also an amateur radio operator. So I enjoyed technology. When studying World War II in high school, I really enjoyed the technical aspects of the airplanes and the battleships, that type of thing, more so than the generals and the personalities involved. So if a person enjoys history as well as technology, ultimately their focus will go towards the Great Pyramid, which is a 45-story skyscraper that was built in ancient times.
And what was that sort of moment, that aha moment, when you sort of got into the pyramids and realized there was much more to this than what Egyptology had told us?
That's an awesome question. Well, I was interested, just like everybody, in pyramids and all of that ancient stuff. Well, I read books by Egyptologists that talk about these precision cut casing stones, how they were cut by hand. So, oh well, that's interesting. Wow, extreme precision, cut by hand. Well, all that science has to do, that I tried to find out about, was the demonstrations, the scientific method that they engaged in to show how these stones were cut by hand, as they say they are in all their books. But I learned something about Egyptology, and that is my aha moment. I learned that Egyptology does not engage in the scientific method. They've never moved a stone or a payload the size of the largest stones of the Great Pyramid. They've never moved one inch. It's never been done. As many cows have jumped over the moon as casing stones made by Egyptologists. They've never even made a single surface of a casing stone in the manner they say it was done. So that's startling for a science to abhor the scientific method. So then I read a host of alternative books, some that talk about they built this great big structure, and its purpose was so that parts of it point to something for symbolic reasons and all of that. And I thought, I don't know. I don't think I would do that work for 20 years to have something point to something. So I read other books by alternative researchers with a technical orientation, because it is a building. It was built. And my interest is in not who built it or even when it was built, believe it or not, but how it was built. So I came across a book called Pharaoh's Pump, published here in the United States, and it talked about how the Great Pyramid was assembled using water locks, and how its purpose was that it was infrastructure for the civilization that built it, that it provided prosperity by being built as a functioning machine, and that machine was infrastructure, and that infrastructure was that the Great Pyramid was a water pump.
Okay, well, this is where we're going to get into. This is what we're going to get into. But before just getting back into your backstory as well. How long have you been working on this theory?
Oh, well, it's been well over 20 years. First of all, it was an interest, and then it became a passion, just like, people that collect stamps or whatever. But now it's a life quest. I've established a nonprofit foundation over here in the United States, and there's a board of directors, legal counsel. We have advisors and all of that, and we're studying how the Great Pyramid was actually built and how the original builders used the pyramid to help them in their in their world.
And how do you think this could change society in a sense, to find out that there is something to this theory that you're proposing, which is, I think, it's a great idea, by the way. And what could we gain from it to make our lives better?
Oh, that's an excellent question. There's a lot of ancient technologies that we use in modern times. Everything from birth control, cesarean sections, brain surgery, all kinds of medicines come out of South America, aspirin and everything else. These are all high technologies that were used in ancient times. And I think that the builders of the Great Pyramid understood things about the world and about physics that we don't understand. And they developed a technology using that understanding. And they were able to pump water very cheaply and cleanly. And this technology, I think, will be a alternative to hydroelectricity and also nuclear powered generation of electricity, as well as coal fired electric power plants. Also, it'll be used to irrigate in third world countries, that type of thing, where they can't afford electricity to irrigate. So I think it has a lot of uses. One function of our nonprofit foundation is humanitarian effort to redevelop this ancient technology and distribute it around the world. We think that we don't need to build great big pyramids, but we can redevelop it certainly on a smaller scale, and it can be built using cottage industries and local manufacturing.
Absolutely amazing. So just, I mean, I really want to get into your story, into the what you've discovered, but just staying on this train of thought for now. Okay, so what could we get from if this is well, what would you call it? You're calling it a water pump, yeah?
Yes.
If this is the case, what benefits could we get from this?
I'll give you an example. The largest structure in the entire continent of Africa is the High Aswan Dam, built in Africa, right by a big river, and it makes electricity. But much of that electricity is used for irrigation. They can irrigate more land using the water pumped by that electricity generated by the Aswan Dam than they could by the once a year inundation that the Nile River had. So the High Aswan Dam is in fact, the major part of a water pumping system. So in ancient times, people had similar wants, needs, and desires as modern people. They wanted to have their bellies full. They wanted to know that they could eat tomorrow. They wanted prosperity. They wanted leisure. And they did all that the same way we did it, using infrastructure. And they did it in a different way, and maybe even a better way. But they're very similar in terms of the result of building a monstrous Aswan Dam as it was in building the Great Pyramid water pump.
Right. So at the time and we're not going to get addicted to timescales here of how old the pyramid is, but in a time before when this was potentially doing this job, there was lots of benefits that came from it, maybe even electricity in a sense, we don't know, yeah? But also the idea that the land around the pyramid might have been green, flourishing with, for farms and everything else.
True. There's a lot of uses besides irrigation, but that certainly is a major one. But to power heavy machinery would be one with the pumped water. Also, the production of compressed air to be used for scientific purposes or other purposes. Before electrification, Paris, they had compressed air all through the city, and they powered small cottage industries and all kinds of things. So either compressed air, irrigation, the production of even static electricity, which has a lot of unusual characteristics that we don't use, but a whole host of purposes that they used. But it's the main thing in terms of humanitarian purposes is the use of generating electricity and also for irrigation.
So when others have talked about the ideas that they were tombs, then potentially that could have been another civilization that had arisen after the fall of the civilization that potentially built the pyramids for its initial use, as you understand it.
Well, maybe. I mean, but none of the Egyptian pyramids had a mummy in them. There's no original mummies in any of the Egyptian pyramids. And possibly at a later date, somebody could have buried some leader in one of the pyramids, reused it just as some of the little crabs in the ocean reuse shells type of thing, but that doesn't mean that they made the shell, if you will. And the Great Pyramid was used as a quarry in the around the year 1000 AD, but that's not the original intent of the Great Pyramid. So we think it was infrastructure, and we think that it was built using water locks and barges, and it was built in an efficient manner. And it wasn't, the Great Pyramid wasn't built as an expense, but it was built as a investment. So that paid off handsomely.
Incredible, absolutely incredible, and I love the videos on your website as well. And now we're going to show some of these videos and just talk around it, but these are all available, and much more is on your website as well. Okay, well let's just go to basic construction procedures, which is video number 2. If you can, just talk us around the sort of basic construction idea, and if you want to move on to any of the other videos, just tell us, and we can put those on the screen as well.
Okay, certainly. At our website at thepump.org, we have a series of videos about how the Great Pyramid was built, and those videos accompany the information in my first book, Lost Technologies of the Great Pyramid. Anyway, the Great Pyramid was built, let's say initially, the first stones that were set in place were the outside stones, a single layer of outside stones, and the casing stones, and they're cemented together, watertight, and that made a square wall, just one level high. And then that area was filled in with water. It impounded a pond. And from that pond, there was a series of water locks all the way down to the Nile River. And all historians and archaeologists and Egyptologists believe that much of the stones were on barges because many of the quarries are across the river. So those stones that are always already on barges would go up this series of water locks all the way up to the construction site and inside that pond. And they would move the interior stones from that pond directly in from the barge down into the pond. And when that pond was filled with stones, the first level of the Great Pyramid was completed. And that process, as shown in our videos, continues until the Great Pyramid rose to the sky, level by level, including the casing stones. Sir Flanders Petrie felt that the Great Pyramid was built level by level, including the casing stones, and that the casing stones were set in place before the interior stones of each level. And this process that we describe is consistent with his order of placement. And so water locks, in fact, are the system of choice in the 21st century to move our largest objects. In the Panama Canal is being expanded right now using water locks because it's the best system in the world in the 21st century. So this construction process continued. There was a series of water locks up the side of the Great Pyramid, and they built level by level, and then ultimately all the way up to the capstone.
Yeah, that's just incredible because we're talking, as you say, skyscraper height. What did you say initially? 45 stories.
About 45 stories. And again, other people have ideas. Egyptology has a narrative that they tell about a big ramp that would have to be of a greater volume than the Great Pyramid itself. So the Great Pyramid was the third largest construction project. First largest was to build the ramp, and the second largest is to remove the ramp. But then again, Egyptologists can't even move a stone around the corner of a spiral ramp. It's never been done. So their system is unworkable. but it is only validated by unanimity of opinion.
Well, that's true. Yeah, how did they actually cut these big stones then as well?
Well, that is a mystery. That is a lost technology that they used in ancient times. I know this, that it has not been demonstrated how it was done, and it's too bad. It would be handy to be able to cut stones in whatever manner they used, and they didn't use it using back muscles or sweat, because high precision can't be accomplished with a lot of people, 100,000 people. If you go in a machine shop, there's machines, but very few people, because a lot of people can't hone the cylinders of a car engine. So I don't know, but I do know this. My understanding about how the stones were cut is greater than the entire understanding of Egyptology, because I know that their books are wrong.
Yes.
Can't be done by hand.
No. A lot of people have told me that the same thing as well. I mean, if we were going to construct such great monuments right now, how could we replicate what they've done even with modern technology?
Yes, with modern technology. If we use big machines that operate on 440 alternating current, we can make casing stones. Run your hand across a granite countertop. We can make precision, large scale stone cutting techniques. So, yes, using modern technology, we could create another Great Pyramid. But the only reason why we would is if the investment would be worth it. Now, the largest structure in North America is the Grand Coulee Dam on the Columbia River. And it's a big dam. It makes a lot of electricity. It also pumps water for irrigation. Very unusual dam, the Grand Coulee Dam. But its operating costs for the whole year is generated by only operating the dam for 2 weeks. So it's a huge return on investment. And if we could get a huge return on an investment for, let's say, another Great Pyramid, we would do it.
Yes, absolutely. Wow, so many questions. One question I have as well is obviously, okay. So we've got to the point where, as the pyramids being built, we've got to the capstones being put on. All that. I mean, we're talking about huge amounts of water in a sense. To get to that height. Using enclosure ponds around the pyramids to ramp up the barges and the stones. Where did that water get dissipated to, do you think, when they'd finished construction and they were then obviously collapsing the enclosure ponds and the scaffolding in a sense?
Well, the water left the Great Pyramid during construction down the water locks. Water goes down water locks, and barges with payloads go up water locks. And it takes about 10 times as much weight in water to move the weight of a payload. So that's a lot of weight and a lot of water. The real question is, how did they supply water to water locks that are high, 200, 300 feet high? The water that goes into the water locks, where did that water come from? And in the Great Pyramid, there are some passages and chambers that were built before the Great Pyramid that are deep below the bedrock. They're cut into solid bedrock, the subterranean chamber, descending passage, and some other passages. And we think that operated similar to, but a little bit different than, a hydraulic ram water pump. So this low subterranean pump supplied water for the construction process, and it made it possible for the Great Pyramid to be built with ease.
And then as the what would you call them? I suppose not the boats that took the stones up there, but what word would you use? The log? No.
Yeah, the water
The water
logs.
logs, sorry, right, get the right word. Yep, these water logs. There's a video on your that we're showing just now as to the kind of an idea of how those water logs were brought down as well to be reloaded, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, the barges, we don't think went down the water logs, and most water lock systems have pairs of locks side by side so they can go in both directions. But we think that that is an unnecessary complication for the construction of the Great Pyramid. They just hoisted these empty barges that are relatively light over the side of the Great Pyramid, and they slid down the side until they entered the enclosure pond that was around the Great Pyramid, and then went back down to the Nile River so that they could be reloaded again. So it's kind of a unique idea. What I like about this using water and buoyancy and barges is that it is so versatile. There's our video series shows specialized barges that help place the largest stones of the Great Pyramid in place using specialized stone moving methods to manipulate different stones. So I invite people to watch that series, which is also available commercially as a DVD documentary. But it's free on our nonprofit foundation's website. So the video series will answer a lot of questions and probably create a lot of questions in your mind.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's great animation, and I think you've done a fantastic job of trying to put your ideas across in such a style. And again, as the well, yeah, as I think whether I've said this or not, but as the pyramids was built, then obviously the enclosure ponds would come off, one by one, and I guess then it was, there was some sort of limestone, sorry, was then applied to the outside of the pyramid, which would have given it a very shiny look, would it not?
Yeah, the limestone that was replaced where the water locks were on the casing stones would have given this very ancient building an ultra modern look. So it's almost an out of place artifact. Huge, large precision stonework, no ornamentation, no Book of the Dead, no formal hieroglyphics. There's a few quarry marks, some graffiti, but there's no writing at all because it's a functioning machine. It doesn't need writing to do what it was supposed to do. Now, the temples and the tombs, which in the Valley of the Kings and temples in ancient Egypt, they have writing all over them on the columns and everything else. But this is much different than any type of a religious structure.
How, in your understanding, would you see this pump working?
Oh, excellent. I actually wrote an entire book that answers that specific question, The Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine. Both of my books are available in softcover or Kindle ebook format. But water, like I say, went into the subterranean chamber through the descending passage. And it operated in such a manner that it pumped water up into the Grand Gallery. And then we think that above the Grand Gallery, above the water in the Grand Gallery, in the upper portion of the Grand Gallery, hydrogen was extracted from water using electrolysis. A number of researchers that have a technical explanation of the Great Pyramid feel that hydrogen was used. And when you ignite this hydrogen-oxygen mixture that was separated from water, there is a combustion that occurs. But what happens, the result of that combustion, is a very powerful vacuum. And that vacuum lifts this massive piston of water in the Grand Gallery, huge, about 100 tons. Well, at a particular time, and this is all explained in the book, a mechanism is operated that opens a valve, which breaks the vacuum. And then this 100-ton piston moves down and compresses water or the air in the upper part of the Queen's chamber. And then that compressed air, it passes several valves and stuff that are gone now. But ancient historians wrote about these doors on pivots. But we think they're like check valves. Ultimately, the water would exit the king's chamber vents, and then from there it would be moved down the casing stones through probably a passage that is no longer there because the casing stones aren't there, and then to the point of use. So it was a powerful, efficient water pumping system that's fairly complex. You can't just explain it in a minute or two. But I invite people to check my book out of the library, or find out more information before they make any major conclusion as to this research. I know the interest has been very high. I'm just a humble researcher, but it's very rewarding how much interest there is in this type
No,
of
no, it's
thing.
absolutely fascinating. It really, really is. And you may have mentioned this before as well, but when we talk about eyewitnesses' stories at the time, there is the odd ones that come through, isn't there?
Yes, yes. Herodotus talked to the priests at the Great Pyramid. This is the 5th century BC. And he asked them, how was the Great Pyramid built? Well, there were legends handed down about the stones being effortlessly floated into place some way, and that there were machines using short wooden planks. Egyptologists say, oh, well, that was levers. Well, why don't you demonstrate levering a 70-ton casing, a 70-ton stone, with wooden levers? They don't demonstrate it, and there's a reason for it. But there's a lot of legends based on eyewitness reports, and that includes these short wooden planks. But we think that they were like doors on water locks. Some of the early water locks, like the Erie Canal here in the USA and some in the UK, still have short wooden planks for doors. So there's a lot of evidence for a profound link between water and the Great Pyramid. Herodotus described the Great Pyramid very fascinating. He said it was like an island surrounded by water. Isn't that odd? And he also said that there was an artificial duct connected to the Great Pyramid that could have been part of the input for the water, or even where the water exited. A lot of things have changed since he saw the Great Pyramid, but these are all tantalizing clues about how the Great Pyramid originally was.
And we have to remember as well that potentially the Nile River, wasn't quite where it is now in a sense.
Oh no, it's changed its course certainly through the millennia, and also its level has changed. And the Great Pyramid, like the Sphinx, might be much older than traditional Egyptologists say it is. They've gotten a lot of things wrong, so that could be wrong also. So it's hard to guess exactly, the location of the Nile when the Great Pyramid was operating, and that type of thing. But there's certainly a lot that we can understand about how the Great Pyramid worked and how that technology can be redeveloped for a modern but very troubled world.
Oh yes, that's so true. That's so true, and that's why I like the avenue you're going down. There's the humanitarianism, behind this work as well, which is just fantastic. Is there sort of detectable salt levels then on the stones, near the Queen's Chamber, or.
Oh, yeah. Excellent question. I always forget that. Yes, salts. Look up salts, the Queen's Chamber, and the Great Pyramid. There's a lot of, or there was in the 18th and 19th century, deposits of what they call salts, but it was mineral deposits that we think were the results of the electrolysis that was going on. A lot of that has been cleaned off or removed for cosmetic purposes, just to make it look better or whatever. But some of it was like a half-inch thick. Believe it or not, there's no remaining sample of those salts to examine. But word search salts and the Great Pyramid. Also, the Grand Gallery had salts deposits in it too. So a lot of it is sediment. Sir Flanders Petrie found what he called, back in the 19th century, Nile earth, but it was sediment in the Great Pyramid, another piece of evidence that indicates water was fundamentally linked with the Great Pyramid. So yeah, there were all kinds of water-related pieces of evidence in regards to the Great Pyramid.
It's very interesting, isn't it? The ideas of how its purpose has been forgotten, and how this technology that built these pyramids, how we don't know how they initially did it. It's like some sort of mass extinction happened on planet Earth, mass amnesia in a sense, where everything was wiped
I've
off.
heard that term before. Yes. There's a lot of ideas out there. There's an idea called uniformitarianism, which is that we came from the Stone Age and we were cavemen, and then we were agricultural, and then we finally, progressed in a uniform manner, and here we are today. But there's catastrophism, is an alternative view that in the past there have been some advanced civilizations, and advanced in some manner, and that some catastrophe has occurred, either political, could be a plague, could be an asteroid strike. The Bible says that there was a catastrophe called the flood. So, and there's a lot of legends about various catastrophes. So, I think much of the information about the Great Pyramid, how it was used, how to operate it, was lost, and possibly the Great Pyramid was built pre-catastrophe, and then we lost the information about the Great Pyramid and so many other things that ancient mankind consider, created. I give credit to the original builders that they were geniuses and magnificent in their understanding. While Egyptology says, oh well, they were knuckle draggers and 1 foot out of the Stone Age, and they built this great big tombstone to show the tomb robbers where the treasure was.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
strange.
Well, and when you think about mass extinction or some catastrophe or whatever it may be on a global level, if we had nuclear war right now, stone monuments would still exist. They would be the only thing. Or if
Absolutely.
an event like an asteroid, then stone's going to still survive. Um,
Yes. Yeah, they would use hydroelectric dams because probably rivers would change their course, just as the Nile. They would use ruined hydroelectric dams as temples, and then they would write um, their religious writing on the hydroelectric dams. And then 10,000 years later, archaeologists would say, well, the people that wrote in the dams are the people that built the dams.
but actually,
In the United States, I live in the western half of the United States, and there's a lot of Indian artifacts. So within 1,000 feet of the Grand Coulee Dam, there are arrowheads. That doesn't mean the people that made the arrowheads were the same people that made the hydroelectric
no.
dam. So,
Well,
so
this was our
anyway,
point earlier
it's
on, wasn't it? That when one civilization
yes,
comes along, it's not the original civilization that was the ones that built these structures. But it takes an open mind to look at this.
it does. And there's a revolution in thought in a lot of things, not just ancient mankind, but about how humans need to interact with each other and the environment. We're not just here to rape and pillage the world, and people have different ideas. It's a revolution of thought here in the 21st century, and that includes understanding of the Great Pyramid. A political candidate running for president right now, Ben Carson, he thinks that the Great Pyramid was a granary. And actually, that's what they thought in the Middle Ages in Europe, was that the Great Pyramid was a granary, because the Bible talks about big buildings in Egypt that held grain. Well, you got these big buildings in Egypt, so they're a granary. Well, that idea has lost favor. Let me put it that way. So
Well,
it's not often the Great Pyramid becomes a topic of presidential
Well, again, let's just
politics.
go back. When the Bible was written, that was the understanding then of what the civilization may have been using it for. That doesn't mean it was the originating civilization that's what the purpose was for. But your idea, your concept is truly unique. It really, really is. Um,
I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
well, it is. It's very, very interesting what you've come up with and the work that you've put into this. But then I wonder why the pyramid shape. Why would they, if this was a pump, what was so special about the shape of the pyramid?
Excellent question. Many hydroelectric dams they impound water. So it's a wall that's up against water. Well, during the construction process, all four walls impounded water. And then that was inside the Great Pyramid, even between the cracks of the stones all the way down to the bedrock. Well, the best way to impound water is to have these four dams, if you will, back to back and hold the water on the interior. So I think that's why the Great Pyramid was built in the manner that it was built. Again, you can go look at hydroelectric dams and get a sense of what the smooth side of the Great Pyramid once looked like, because they're often, if they're a flat dam, not a curved dam, but they have a side that looks like the side of the Great Pyramid. So it's interesting.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And yeah, some people have talked about a spiritual purpose as well. Um,
They have. Hmm. Yeah, there's a school of thought, if you will, called the Ryan correlation theory that considers that the all of the features of the Great Pyramid are symbolic, and that the vents point to stars, or that it's has certain alignments with constellations and all of that, and a century ago there was the biblical correlation that all of these same aspects of the Great Pyramid correlated with aspects of the Bible. And then people, said that the Great Pyramid predicted where Jesus was going to be born, the Bethlehem angle. You can word search that. And, when, the 40 years that they spent in the desert, and when, Jesus was crucified, and the pyramid inch and all of this stuff. But, a lot of those correlations are precise, but they don't have a causation. You have to have a separate piece of evidence for a correlation
well,
to
well,
be validated. There's a correlation between pirates and global warming. The less pirates we have, the more global warming we've had since the 1700s. But there's no causation between the two. So all of these correlation theories, and whatever the next correlation theory is, just people drawing lines on a graph of the pyramid, if you will, and then they just say Shazam, it's a correlation. But I don't think that it's true. I don't think that it's valuable. I think that it is incorrect.
well, that's very that's
So
very interesting.
just
I mean, let's just look at some of those mysteries that they talk about. They talk about the value of pi represented in the Great Pyramid.
right. Okay, let me offer you a question. Maybe they were trying to tell you how long the calendar year was, but they got it wrong.
Maybe.
Just because you look at everything on the Great Pyramid using any unit of measure, using everything that you can imagine in the entire universe, and come up with something that you adjust the math, and it's pi. Well, that doesn't mean that that's what the original builders were trying to tell us. Do you understand what I'm
Absolutely, you could
saying?
apply that as well to Orion and the Great Pyramid, in the sense that the southern shaft in the King's Chamber pointed to the star. Oh, some say to Orion's. I'm not sure what the constellation was.
Yeah,
And
right. But
that was another.
but they but they don't point to those
No,
stars now. So is it a temporary correlation?
well, that is true. Yep.
Okay. Okay. How about this? It just became the 21st century, and because of the precession of the equinoxes, the grand precession is a better term. The vents point to different stars. Okay, maybe that correlation is the correlation
Well,
they intended. How
well,
do
they
you
did
know that
say
it's
that it
not?
was built in harmony with the galaxy at the time.
Right. So they didn't intend to have them point to Orion. They intended to have them point to the stars that they actually point to now. How do you know that that's not right?
Well, exactly. And then there's the talk about the Ark of the Covenant and the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah, they talk about that.
The connection there. Um,
But all of these people that talk about correlations and they draw lines on maps and everything, it's funny. They don't have to come up with a causation. They don't have to move a stone. They don't have to build anything. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to engage in the scientific method. They just find out something in the
okay,
universe
well, yep.
that that matches something else, and
Ab-
it's a correlation. That's a logical fallacy. It's called
a-
cherry
abs-
picking. You
Absolutely.
can't do
And
that.
just finally, I'll just end on this because I don't want to, we've got many more things to talk about, but, the alignment of true north, the Great Pyramid of Giza is the most accurate aligned structure in the existence and faces true north with only a third of a 60th of a degree of error, if that's right. Um,
I've heard that,
Amazing, isn't it? Again,
but
yeah, it's
well, it's
interesting, yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
But what if they were trying to, instead of having the sides align with the cardinal points of the compass, they tried to have the points of the corners of the pyramid aligned to the cardinal points, but they got it wrong. How do you know that?
That's right,
You don't know it.
absolutely.
It's just, what if they said, well, the alignment doesn't matter at all? It could be anyway, so we'll just have it square to the world. Why not? My house, I live in a subdivision. My house is aligned to 1/8 of an inch to my neighbor's house.
Yeah. I
You know
know
what I'm
exactly what
saying?
you're saying,
So
I'll say one thing for it all though. They had a knowledge, didn't they? The people that built this, you
oh
know.
man, they were they were they were profoundly connected with the universe and with construction projects. They had high technology that we can only guess how they did it. They did the construction of the Great Pyramid, I think, in an extremely efficient manner. And I think that the Great Pyramid served a real purpose instead of something to appease gods or to be symbolic or to tell us something. Certainly, I think that they were smarter than to build that Great Pyramid so they can tell us that they knew pi.
I, I,
That is
yeah,
outrageously
yeah, and you've got
ridiculous
to
to
think
me.
about it as well. Where did that knowledge come from?
That's true. It's hard to say. They could have had just one individual, like a Nikola Tesla or a Victor Schauberger, and maybe they lived so long that they ago that they lived for 3, 4, 500 years. Can you imagine if Nikola Tesla would have been financially supported and allowed to work for a career, let's say, of 500 years? Just all they needed was one guy, and they would have had prosperity that we can't
No,
even imagine. You know,
no,
yeah, brilliant. Not knuckle draggers.
no, definitely not, definitely not. No, and that, yeah, when you think of things like that, the possibilities, it's just incredible, isn't it? To just think what they possibly had back then. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Can you imagine the medicine that they had? I know in ancient South America they did brain surgery and the patient survived. You can tell, and all the medicines and just a whole host of things instead of what we have. Just bizarre. We pollute our world so we can drive around, so we can drive to jobs we don't like. What a
It's
world.
crazy.
I'm sure theirs was so much
It's
better than
crazy, isn't
ours.
it? Yeah, the direction that we've gone in. We think we're so high tech, which we are in a sense, but we've definitely
We
missed our
are.
connection to one another, and the importance of our spiritual side as well. That what you do to another, you do to yourself.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And hopefully, we have a small research facility here at our foundation's headquarters on the Pacific coast of the United States. And we are working on a fundraising project right now to get a 3D printer to print out some of the components. You can go to our website for more information on that. Hopefully, people will help us with that fundraising project, and we're doing a whole host of things. Hopefully, we can go back to Egypt. We've been there for some research and fund a trip to go back, and just a whole number of things. But I've written a whole bunch of articles in magazines that have appeared across the globe. New Dawn, the Adventure Unlimited Press's magazine called World Explorer, Mindscape magazine, wonderful magazine, and Phenomena magazine, as well as the Heretic magazine. So besides the books, we're doing magazine articles with additional research. And I invite people to contact our go to our website and contact us through email. And, if they have any questions, please let us know.
Absolutely. And obviously you've been to Egypt over the years. For the minute, you probably traveled there many times. What do you see the state of play right now in Egypt in regards to visiting the pyramids and the safety aspect and everything else?
Oh yeah, safety. Well, I'll tell you, it's much safer to go to Cairo than it is to go to Chicago, Illinois, here in the United States. The Egyptians are wonderful people, and they have accommodated tourists for 5,000 years. I mean, that's what they do, and they are friendly. If you go there, everybody speaks English. And I guess if I was German and I went there, everyone would speak German. I mean, they accommodate you. They will do anything for you. Also, the foreign exchange of money is very favorable. So once you get to Egypt, a beautiful 5-star room is like, I don't know now, but it could be $50-$60 US, and meals are cheap, transportation is cheap. So there's no place like it in the world, ancient Egypt. So I'm certainly try to be an ambassador to promote tourism for them. So I know tourism is down because of the nature of the world today and the news. But if you get a chance, it's well worth the risk.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I'd love to go one day. I'm going to go one day, most definitely. And
yeah, it's very safe, I think. So if you get a chance, go there. So here in the United States, it's certainly a more expensive plane ticket than in the United Kingdom. But again, once you get there, everything is very affordable.
Right.
So it's something you can't pass up in a lifetime. So give it a try. Tell them Stephen Meyer.
Don't worry, absolutely. There you go. So say that. Yeah. Well, there's many ways to. There's many organisations out there that do tour organisations. Once you get there, in all the years of doing your work as well, what would you say is possibly one of the most important messages of your work?
Well, probably the most important is that Egyptology is wrong. That's the most important thing. And somehow, here in the 21st century, they still teach the same old thing in universities. There's universities that have departments of Egyptology. And to me, that's so strange. Maybe I'm ahead of the curve or whatever, and they never engage in the scientific method. They never give out valid demonstrations. They just tell one generation of Egyptologists the same story, and then they tell the next story. Science has changed, and science has actually come and go. There was a science called phrenology, which studied the bumps on people's heads and how that relates to their psychological problems. And that was a popular study that you could take classes in college and graduate as a phrenologist and have a career doing that. But the problem with phrenology is that it could not withstand the rigors of the scientific method. there is no correlation between the bumps of your head and your psychological issues. So phrenology as a science went away. It is in the dustbin of forgotten ideas. And much of what Egyptology says, especially in terms of technical issues, is absolutely incorrect. And you can find errors in books that were written this year that say the same old silly stories. And that's the first thing that people need to understand. And then to understand that real people in the real world actually really did move very heavy objects on a production-like basis, and to understand how that was done. So hopefully they can consider my research as an alternative and find out about it, conduct their own research, and then consider the information my books provide.
Absolutely. Well, all I want to say is, Stephen Myers, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's been a tremendous pleasure, and I really appreciate being on your show. What an honor for me.
Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.